Now, I know as soon as you saw the title for this video, you got unbelievably excited because I know everybody loves working with fraction problems. So I'm going to make sure that I don't talk too much at the beginning of the video so we can get to your favorite thing in the entire world. So when we're adding or subtracting fractions, I'm hoping that you remember that we want to find a common denominator. So for these problems here, the denominator is the bottom, or 3 and 5, and the common denominator would be 15. In order to make this the common denominator, I have to change the top so that I don't make this a different fraction. I go from 3 to 15 by multiplying by 5. So I go 2 times 5 to get 10. And I know that 2/3 and 10/15 are the same thing. They mean the same thing. From the same piece here, 5 times 3 is 15. So 4 times 3 is 12. Now when we're doing fractions, when you add a half plus a half, you don't add the bottoms. You add just the top portions and get 2 halves. Here's the same idea. So I do 10 plus 12, and I get 22 over 15, which, since that can't be simplified, would be the answer, unless I was asking for a mixed number, which means that I'm going to pull out as many 15s as I can, which is 1, and then there are 7 15ths left over. Now, I went through that a little quickly, but if you need help on working through adding fractions, make sure you let me know. Fractions are just something that are always difficult for everyone, so we are going to need many refreshers over our lifetime to remember how to do fractions. For these problems on the bottom, in order to add them together, we need to turn them into improper fractions first. That means we can't have the whole number out front. So I do 3 times 4, and I get 12, and then I add in 3 to get 15 over 4. And then for the one here, I do 2 times 6, and I get 12. And then I add in 5, and I get 17 over 6. Now I want to find a common denominator, which is going to be 12. And so I do 4 times 3 for 12. 15 times 3 is 45. And then I do 6 times 2 is 12. 17 times 2 is 34. I subtract these together, and I get 11/12. And I do not need to convert that one, so there are my 2 answers. I want you to try these on your own. For the top one, I only have to change the one on the left, so I get 6/9 minus 4/9. I subtract the 6 minus the 4 and get 2/9. And that's it. For the bottom one, I have to turn this into an improper first. And so I get 6 over 5 plus 7 over 8. Now this one, the common denominator is going to be 40. So we might get some big numbers here. 5 times 8 is 40, so 6 times 8 is 48. 8 times 5 is 40. 7 times 5 is 35. I add these up, and that's going to be 83. And I did that by 40 plus 30 is 70. 8 plus 5 is 13. 70 plus 13 is 83. This is 40. Now a mixed number is actually going to be much, much easier here because I pull out as many 40s as I can, which is 2 of them. And I have 3 40s left over. There you go. So 2 and 3/40. For multiplying fractions, just like decimals, you could find a common denominator, like decimals with multiplying. You could line up the decimal place, but it will add extra work. When we're multiplying fractions, the easiest way to do it is to just multiply across the tops and across the bottoms, or across the numerators and across the denominators. But I have to make them in proper fractions first. So for the top problem, I go 7/4 times 4/5. I do not need a common denominator, but I could get one if I wanted, but it would add work. So I multiply 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times 5 is 20. And now I simplify. 14/10, 7/5. If I needed a mixed number, 1 and 2/5. And that would be my answer for either of those problems. Down here on the bottom, I go 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 2 is 8/3. And then here I get 7/2. I can multiply across the top, across the bottom, and get 56/6. That can simplify into 28/3, or 9 1/3. Okay. If you have questions on that, please let me know in class. Dividing fractions are exactly like multiplying fractions, except we have to add a step. And I'm hoping that somewhere in your brain something's triggering that you can hope that you remember. You flip the second fraction before you multiply. So for this first problem, all I have to do is I turn that to a multiplication sign, and I flip the second fraction. The most common mistake that you will see on these problems is someone flips the first fraction, or they flip both fractions. Remember, you always flip the second fraction. You'll probably hear me say that just about 1,000,000 times. 5 times 3 is 15. 6 times 2 is 12. Simplify. I will divide by 3 and get 5/4, which is one of the possible answers. A mixed number would be 1 1/4. And for the last problem of the video, I know you're really sad to hear that, is 1 1/4 divided by 3 1/2. I have to turn them both into improper fractions, so I get 5/4 divided by 7/2. Now I have to flip the second fraction and turn it to multiplication. So I get 10/28, which simplifies to 5/14. And that one has no extra step to it. Alrighty, that is the last section of this unit. Once you finish those, there will be a quiz, and then we will move on to Unit 2, which will be some review, but mostly new material.